Hi there. Okay, quick one on labour markets. So labour markets are essentially where wages are determined. And the thing that you need to understand about wages is really they're just a price. Wages, they are the price of labour. And because they're a price, they are therefore determined by demand on the one hand and by supply on the other. What you've got to think about is who is doing the demanding when it comes to labour and who's doing the supplying. So who demands workers? So it's not the demand for jobs. That's where people, that's the thing that people are most likely to get wrong here. It's the demand for workers. So the demand comes from firms. Who's supplying labour? Well, we are. So we're supplying labour. So that comes from households. Once you're clear about that, then labour markets really become very straightforward. Because if we draw supply and demand, up here we'll put the wage rate per hour, for example, which is the price. Obviously, at a low wage rate, firms would rather have cheap workers. Why wouldn't you? We look at kind of production in low wage economies. It's very, very labour intensive. So at a low wage, W1, then we can say that the demand for labour is very high at D1. As soon as the wage starts to rise to say W2, then firms will either relocate to kind of lower wage countries, or they'll mechanise, introduce automated processes and so on. So demand is lower. So what we can see is that that's the demand for labour. An increase in the wage from W1 to W2 leads to a reduction in the quantity demanded from D1 to D2. But if we look at supply, of course, that's going to be it's going to be the other way around. Supply is how willing you are to work. Well, at a low wage rate, you'd rather stay on the sofa. If I offer you more money, then you'll kind of go, okay, I'd like to have a job. Doesn't mean you can find one, but you enter the labour market and you start to look. So at a low wage rate, we might say that supply is only S1, but at a high wage rate, supply might be as high as S2. Supply being, again, supply and demand measured along the horizontal axis. So supply looks like that. So then, that then leads us in the usual way to equilibrium. If wage was at W1, demand would be more than supply, so wages would go up. At W2, supply is more than demand, so wages go down. So we therefore end up with an equilibrium wage rate at W star with a quantity of Q star. So far so straightforward. Now, as far as the exams after Easter are concerned, the minimum wage isn't on the spec. So therefore, you need to understand a couple of things. One is about elasticity of demand for labour, and the other is about just changes in wage rates. So we look at elasticity first of all. Again, it's just responsiveness of either demand or supply to a change in wages. So demand, we're saying, if there's an increase in wage, does that lead to a big decrease in the demand for labour? In which case, that makes it elastic. Or does it only lead to a very small decrease in the demand for labour? In which case, that's inelastic. So all you've got to do is think about the real world. If wages go up, do you get rid of your workers? The answer is, well, it depends on how easy they are to replace. So if you can easily replace your workers with machines, and then demand will be elastic. So if it's easier to replace one of the machines, that will lead to relatively elastic demand. It depends on the state of the economy. So it depends on the kind of the level of demand for the firm, or indeed the elasticity of demand for products. Because if demand for your products is very inelastic and wages go up, well, you just pass it on to workers. So you just pass it on to consumers. You just charge a higher price. So essentially, it's the same as the factors that affect price elasticity of demand for goods. How necessary it is, whether there are substitutes, and those sorts of things. And the same is true. The same is true with elasticity of supply for labour as well. Again, this isn't. It's not a difficult concept. This particularly, we're just saying if there is an increase in the wage rate. If there is an increase, if there's an increase in the wage rate, does it lead to a very big increase in the supply of labour? In which case that makes it elastic. Or does it lead only to a small increase in the supply of labour? In which case that makes it relatively inelastic. So wages go up. Well, are you going to want to go and do a job? Can you do a job? Yeah, so it's going to be linked to your ability and your willingness to do a job. So suppose wages go up. Why might you not be willing? Why might you still stay at home? Well, that might depend on things like benefit levels. Yeah, if the government's paying very large amounts of unemployment benefit, then even if wages go up, you might not want to go out to work. So therefore, supply stays low. Ability, you might not. There might be qualifications or skills that you need. So in both of those cases, an increase, both of those things, if benefits levels too high or there's qualifications and skills, that would lead to inelastic supply. Okay, these are our supply elasticities on here. So then the last thing that you need on this one is to understand, well, what can cause wages to change. And really that's anything that can cause the demand or supply to shift. If we look at kind of changes in the equilibrium wage, basically it can be a change, it's something that shifts equilibrium. So an increase or decrease in demand, or an increase, or decrease in supply. So what might affect demand? Well, it could be the state of the economy. That affects the demand for the firm's goods, and that affects the demand for workers. So what that does, it affects what's sometimes called the derived demand for labour. In other words, we demand stuff, and therefore firms demand labour. Or it could be things like technological change, automation, that type of stuff. That might affect the demand for labour. So I mean, it's just common sense stuff. This, it's not particularly, it's not rocket science. I mean, kind of fashions, changes in consumer markets, and so on. And likewise, what's going to affect supply? Well, it could be things like, changes in, kind of education, and training that allow more skilled workers to come in. Or it could be immigration or emigration. Immigration, workers coming in. Emigration, workers going out. All of those can affect, labour supply and demand. And after that, I mean, and anything else you can think of, really. I mean, it's just, when it's supply, it's, basically, sorry, when it's demand, we're saying basically it affects, do firms need or want workers? So it's anything that affects, the firm's need for it. And this affects, can people easily? No, that's sorry, a bad way of phrasing it. It's just saying, is it, am I able and willing to work? And anything that affects my ability or willingness to work, that can cause a shift in supply. So like we said, things like benefit levels, things like skills, and so on and so forth. So then, if you just then say, so what is it that can cause, a change in the equilibrium wage? Well, any one of those things. So if we say take a recession, then there's the supply of labour. There's the demand for labour. In a recession, what's going to happen is that the demand for firms' products goes down. Therefore, they both don't need and can't afford to employ so many workers. Therefore, demand shifts to DL2. At the original wage, there's now more supply than demand, so wages are pushed down to a new equilibrium at W2Q2. Or if we look at, say, the aftermath of Brexit, where we've had quite a lot of emigration. Lots of workers have left the UK. To go back to their own countries in the EU. Then at that stage again we'd have DL1, we'd have SL1 like that. There's your original wage rate W1 and the new wage rate Q1. People leaving the UK. That would cause a shift to the left in supply, a lower level of supply SL2. And that's what firms in the hotel and pubs trade are very worried about. That there won't be enough workers, and therefore wages will rise, which will then have an impact on you because they'll have to increase prices in pubs and restaurants. And really, that's it for basic labour markets. Because the minimum wage isn't on the redacted spec, that's pretty much what you need to know.